Welcome to Politics and Psychology. I'm Dr. Renee Carr, and please introduce yourself in the chat or on social media. Today we are talking about the push to make pedophiles accepted and protected. And for this to not be a one-sided or a one-time conversation, please also give your thoughts or questions in the comment section below. So how are you doing today? Well, I hope you are having a great day and will have a great end of your August. And I care about your life as well as the lives of the children in your life or your community. And so for that reason, it's important for us to understand the why and the how of the push to make pedophiles accepted and protected. Let's start with the definition of pedophilia. Pedophilia is the sexual preference for or very strong interest in infants, prepubescent children, or early pubescent children. This is different from child molestation, where child molestation refers to the single act of sexual assault against an infant or a small child. Child sexual abuse is more of a pattern of sexual abuse, so not like a one time where it might be with molestation. It's a pattern of sexual abuse that persists over a period of time, and usually for criminal charges, it's usually brought against individuals who commit these acts against older children and adolescents. So again, pedophilia, the sexual preference for or a strong sexual interest in infants, prepubescent children, or early pubescent children. To the normal individual, it may be very clear or even disgusting for the idea of an infant to be a sexual object, or for a young child or a prepubescent child to be considered a very sexually arousing object of affection. But the reason why we're having the conversation is because there has been an increasing interest and an increasing push to make pedophiles protected and for pedophilia to be seen as a sexual preference that must be protected. And the reason why this is a problem is because the sexual preference is only from the person who is victimizing the child or the infant, that is the pedophile. Children in this instance do not have a choice. They are succumbing to the pressure. It may not be an aggressive act. They may have been groomed to make them think that it was their idea to engage in the act, but it is undeniable that children are not biologically, nor are they psychologically at the developmental level able to understand the full extent of what sexual intercourse or sexual activities involved, nor are their bodies prepared to even have responses to desire it physically, nor to respond from a sense of pleasure. So in no instance is pedophile considered a sexual preference for the child. But there is a new group emerging called MAPS, and what they are pushing or trying to push is for pedophiles to not be quote unquote villainized, but to instead be understood. And so by changing the title from pedophiles to MAPS, they are wanting to gain support from the community and to also have quote unquote equal rights against being discriminated for their preferences. MAPS refers to minor attracted persons. As a psychologist, it is a disorder to have an attraction to a minor when you are an adult. Even more, it is a disorder and a psychological dysfunction to have a sexual attraction to an infant who can barely walk, much less say, agree, or physically express a desire to have sex with anyone, much less an adult. The way that it's becoming normalized is first with language. So by having pedophiles try to reinvent or rebrand themselves as MAPS by saying they're merely minor attracted persons, they're trying to use softer language. So by saying, oh, well, I'm just attracted to minors. And it's not minors, it's infants and children. So by saying that I'm just minor attracted, they're trying to convey the image of, oh, well, they're like 17, so they're a minor. Oh, well, we've seen 17s who are sexy, or 15-year-olds who are very sexy and very sexually promiscuous. So they're trying to point the image that that's who they're attracted to. No, you're attracted to children and infants. So by saying minor attracted, it takes away their accountability. It also skews and grays the image of what you were thinking of when they're talking about who they want to have sex with. By also saying persons, they're making it sound as if, well, I'm a person too. And don't I have rights? Don't I have equal rights? And so by adding in the persons, they're trying to play on the social push of equality and justice and at all costs non-discrimination against any person who is in a quote unquote marginalized group such as sexual deviation. And so the more and more you are accepting of, as they are calling themselves, queer sexual behavior, pedophilia is included in that. If you look at the little symbols that they're using, you will see one of the symbols for you being a pedophile, or as they are saying, a minor attracted person, is to have, it's an older man holding the hand of a younger boy, a significantly younger boy. And that's their symbol. So, and you also see a very small p when they have LGBTQIA plus, and then it might have a small little p. That's what that means. So this is letting you know that, yes, I am attracted to it. And not only am I attracted to children, but I believe that it's my right to be treated equally in the Constitution, in America, as a matter of law, as a matter of fact, as a matter of social justice, that I'm a person, and because I am attracted to minors, that I should be accepted. So by using twisted language, by using virtuous sounding language, they are trying to get your emotions aroused, and they're also trying to make you feel guilty for even questioning them as a person or having a preference. So you have to be careful and recognizing that any attempts to make pedophiles renamed to be minor attracted persons is an attempt to, one, create a virtuous sounding language so that they can, two, feel less guilty about raping infants and children. There's also emotional language that's being used, and they'll say, well, it's not really my choice. Just like if you're a homosexual, that wasn't your choice to be born that way. That's just who you are. So this is my choice. Or you're born a heterosexual. That was just how you were born, and you can't change that. And that's why I can't change this. But that's not true. You are not born this way. And in fact, you're actually, something most likely has happened to the pedophile who was either sexually abused at that same young age, or during a near age, or for whatever reason, they may have sexual dysfunction when interacting with adults of the same language, and they feel either more power or more sexual pleasure with it being infants. But in no situation is this a normal behavior. It is an actual psychological dysfunction to be able to see children as a sex object. They might also use virtuous sounding language such as, well, this is my civil right, or you had to focus on equality and justice for all, and you are discriminating against me if you are being upset that this is what I am preferring to do. So what the minor attracted person, or MAPS as they're calling themselves, are trying to do by changing pedophilia and by changing the characteristics that are being promoted in social media and in the news, are now saying that, well, no, this is just part of my civil right, and you should not be infringing upon my civil rights. And actually, I'm going to sue you because you're focusing against equality and discrimination, and you are stigmatizing me. And so the concerted effort to destigmatize pedophilia is what we are seeing. And there's also, in addition to this, they are trying to defend their actions on the grounds that this is an affection, and I'm just being affectionate with the child. And all children want to have affection, and all children want to have love. Well, that's a very twisted way of showing affection, because having sex with children is not affection, that's actually rape. So, if you look in social media, you may have started seeing this, but may not be sure of what exactly it is you are looking at. So, there's a community of pedophiles, again, MAPS, and you may also see this if you follow on TikTok. There's a huge following for libs of TikTok. You will see where, in addition to promoting transgender and other self identified queer individuals, they are including pedophilia as part of this, even to the point of even designing their own flag and saying that anyone opposing MAPS and pedophiles are having prejudice and having an act of oppression against them having quote unquote minor attractions to other individuals. So, one way that this normalization of pedophilia happens within the individual, so this is like the psychology of the pedophile, is that they often use sexual desensitization and also sexual practice. So, if you look on Amazon, there are babies that are being sold that are actual infant sex dolls. And if a person is saying that they are a non offending but only a minor attracted person, what happens is, because that is a psychological disorder, they can't just think it's going to go away. Just like you just can't think diabetes is going to go away. So because they are no longer able to give into these urges, they will say, okay, well, let me just try it with just a doll. And that way I'm not hurting anybody, but I'm getting my sexual release and everything is a win-win. The problem is, whenever you have desensitization, it only wants you to have a increased desire to have a more and more realistic experience. So eventually it goes from a person who is a pedophile only having fantasies about having sex with infants and children to then trying dolls that are made just for this. And the way that you can tell is if on Amazon and other places, it will say anatomically correct infant doll. That is giving language and signal to let the pedophiles know, or the practicing pedophiles to know, that this is anatomically correct, so you can use their vagina or anus as a way for sexual pleasure to practice on. That's the code language for on Amazon. Disgustingly, it hasn't been removed, and there are several sites that offer them. If you also look into people using them, that's a way to get desensitized. There's also a desensitization because if you feel you have physical support from peers who are also engaging in sexual deviant behavior, or if you have a group that supports you. This is often found on Twitter and Facebook. Facebook and Twitter both allow not only the posting of comments of saying that they are pedophiles or attracted to minors and that they are feeling discriminated against, they are also allowing pictures, which is where I found the flags and the images of what the symbols look like. It's very easy to find. And even when I tried to report instances of this, the response is, well, everyone is able to have their choice and quote unquote express themselves. In 2019, although Twitter claims to have a zero tolerance child exploitation policy, they updated their policy to now say, well, we can still have a discussion of minor attracted person. So again, this is 2019. Even more recently, in 2022, which is this year, if you're listening today as it goes live, January the 11th, 2022, there was a USA Today article, which it did spark outrage on Twitter, but it did not stop the discussion of promoting minor attracted sex or pedophilia. And so in the article, the person was saying that pedophiles are getting a bad rap, and quote unquote, this is the title, "What the Public Keeps Getting Wrong About Pedophilia." And it goes on to say that it's just a misunderstood attraction and that you can't be blamed having an attraction to anyone as long as you are not acting on it, and that society should be able to normalize the acceptance of and tolerance for sexual deviance by children. So again, using language, using high-profile media outlets such as Twitter, Facebook, USA Today, the emotional language is also used as justifying language so that they can then promote the continuation and the protection of pedophilia. The article from the USA Today Also, actually, this was from an article in June 2021. It was the Washington Post, and their article said, yes, kink belongs at Pride, and I want my kids to see it. And so that was, again, including and grooming children to have sexually deviant behavior, and even as far as being exposed to images, conversations, objects, sexual objects, and other live experiences of it. In 2014, there was a New York Times op-ed. So we're seeing all of these very high-profile articles that are not only talking about pedophiles and pedophilia, but are talking about the promotion and protecting of them. And so it's important for us to see that even in 1914, even in 1921, 1922, which is very recent, people are focusing on the pedophiles being protected. And in the 2014 New York Times op-ed, the author wrote that a pedophile should be held responsible for his conduct, but not for the underlying attraction. So again, by trying to separate, by trying to mince words, by saying, oh, well, you're attracted, but you're not really acting on it, so then you're okay. We're completely missing the mark with understanding that deviant behavior starts from a thought. Thoughts lead to emotions, and usually the emotions lead to behavior. And so this is not going to go away just because you want to. And if it's okay for a pedophile to have a sexual preference, in no instance is anyone considering that the pedophile is acting with someone else, and that is a child. So there is more protection and more purposes of promoting the pedophile being protected and being seen as a person. And there is very little conversation about protecting the child. If we can say that if a man forces a woman to have sex, that is considered rape, that is punishable as a criminal charge, then why is it being okay? Why is it being seen as a civil liberty or as a proposed opportunity for equality if a man can then have sex with an infant, but then the infant is not protected, and instead it is the adult rapist or the adult pedophile who is saying, well, it's my choice. So we had to focus on recognizing the language that's being used, how we can stop changing it to make it more sensitive, to make it where it's more quote unquote equality and justice and non-discrimination. And we have to call a spade a spade. Pedophilia, having a sexual interest and acting on sexual urges with infants, children, prepubescent children, or early pubescent children, is not okay. It is actually rape and traumatic for children. And if a person is having those sexual desires, whether you call yourself a minor attracted person or a pedophile, it's still a psychological dysfunction and disorder that should be treated and not promoted. So if you are interested in helping to stop the promotion of pedophiles as being a choice, then I have just a few things that we can have. Just remember that pedophiles having sex with infants and young children is always going to be rape. No infant can give sexual consent, nor can any young child have a physical or developmental biological ability for the body to safely engage in sexual acts. Also, do not believe that all sexual preferences are natural. Third, understand that sexual acts with infants and children are not natural but are sexually deviant, meaning it deviates from developmentally normal and healthy sexual activities for both the child and the pedophile. It's not a natural behavior. And fourth, if you want to be involved on a legal standpoint or just in a community standpoint, consider attending your city council meetings and speak up. Even if you want to just do something that's more low-key and anonymous, you can just simply like a social media post that supports protecting the child instead of the pedophile. And lastly, remember that sexually deviant persons are going to these meetings. They are the ones making the ruckus and sounding the alarm. So the squeaky wheel is what's getting the oil. So if we are silent about allowing pedophiles to have quote unquote rights and quote unquote equality, you're focusing on the benefit and comfort of a person who is victimizing and perpetrating acts against a child, rather than focusing on the protection of the child itself. So I thank you all for listening. And also just remember that this may end our time for today, but please not ending the conversation. And so remember that when you do have the conversations, please remember to use science and love. And if you run too fast,